Welcome to Awakened Motherhood, the podcast where mothers share their powerful stories of healing and empowerment. I am your host, Amanda Quick, best-selling author, TEDx speaker, and advocate. In each episode, we dive deep into the stories of mothers who have overcome adversity, found their fierce feminine power, and embraced transformative parenting. Whether you're a mother driven to fight for your children or someone with a story burning inside you, this podcast is for you. Together, we'll explore themes of resilience, self-trust, and healing from our traumatic experiences, all spotlighting the profound journeys of awakened mothers. Join us for a space of naked authenticity, deep inspiration, and genuine connection. Embrace the divine feminine and discover your own warrior mama within. Welcome to Awakened Motherhood, where your story is the spark for change. Welcome, everyone, back to another episode of Awakened Motherhood. I am your host, Amanda Quick, and today I am so excited to introduce our guest today, Nancy Hart. Nancy, she has a book. She's an author. Her book, Whispers, Sinners, and Saints, available on Amazon. And her recipe for happiness is to share ideas and deep thoughts to avoid wasting time in superficial conversations and gossip. She's traveled to 6 out of the 7 continents. She grew up in Manhattan and South Florida. She's a xenophile, preferring exposure to various cultures of the world over sand and sun. She graduated with a Bachelor's of Arts in Psychology from the University of Miami. She studied art appreciation in Europe, attended the Fashion Institute of Technology, studied Kabbalah and Buddhism, and traveled to the perimeters of the United States. My goodness, Nancy's philosophy is one who laughs loudest, masters pain the best. Pain offers the opportunity to discover one's true self and greatest strengths. Nancy now lives in Colorado. She is an ambivert, and when not writing with her Maltese poodle Cookie Cake and Havishire Gypsy by her side, she enjoys urban hikes, mahjong, Scrabble, Reiki as a master, playing billiards, and meditation. Above all else, when Nancy is not spending quality time with friends or her adult children, she's guest on podcasts and speaking at book clubs. My goodness, Nancy, that is just quite a intro. Even reading through, I was just, oh my goodness, welcome. I would love if you would just kind of start at the beginning. You know, your bio brings a lot of color to you, but I would love for you to start, wherever feels like the right place to start, about kind of the person you used to be.
Oh, okay. So I think I'll start with my book because that kind of is the beginning. Whispers, Sinners, and Saints. Whispers is an intangible, but it is the prime character in the book, because without it, I call it a guardian angel or the divine, I would not be able to be living here and speaking with you and enjoying life and enduring what I haven't had rosy colored glasses all my life. I might have to put, I have to put them on. Sometimes I have my angel wear, but it's been a difficult road. The Sinners was my mother, and that is where we come in and have a connection through this show, because you talk about mothers and how important a role that mothers have in people's lives. All I ever wanted from my mother was to feel that I was just good enough, would have been fine. And I never got an accolade. I was always degraded. I didn't know if she loved me. She never told me, not even on her deathbed. So my saint, however, is my grandmother, who was went through a lot more even than my mother did. She came from Eastern Europe. They both came from Eastern Europe. I'm the first generation born in America. And they came from particularly Hungary. So I speak Hungarian, because if I didn't speak Hungarian, I wouldn't get fed. So I learned to speak Hungarian. And I was kind of brought up European and Hungarian, if I could say that, as opposed to American. Very strict. And my grandmother was the unconditional love that I got from her. Um, I'm in there. I gave my mother unconditional love. I learned a lot through the bad mother, but I learned a lot through her. And Whispers is always by my side, although he can't intervene. He is always with me.
So your childhood, it sounds, was challenging, right? There was a
Yeah,
very, very challenging childhood.
a lot of people would either be in jail for having killed their mother. I'm just going to say it. I'm very authentic in my book, or they would be in some insane asylum or addicted to some kind of substance.
Mhm.
So if I didn't have a divine connection, and that's where I turned to, reading. That's why I studied Kabbalah. I studied Buddhism. I am baptized Catholic, but I found out at 38 that I'm Jewish. So I will go into any house of worship when I travel. That's what I like to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing.
Connect.
Amazing.
Mhm.
Amazing. And so you really feel like, you had a different type of support through those challenges in childhood.
Yes. When other people have their mother to turn to, I didn't have my mother to turn to. In fact, she was my biggest challenge. So that made everything in the frying pan of life. For example, she was the oil, which was not good. And my grandmother, although she was a saint, she wasn't really around so very much, even though physically she was there. She I don't think we talked about like certain things. She always said, "These are not things you don't talk about this, you don't talk about that." And in that kind of way, boy, I really just let loose with my books and I just say, forget that rule. I can't handle it. I'm telling all.
Yeah. 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 So, I mean, do you have any examples of, that you feel comfortable sharing about what happened in your childhood? Or, a
Oh,
lot of people have some of these challenges and, can probably relate to some of this that you
oh,
went through.
oh, absolutely. And I don't hold anything back in my first, second, third, fourth book. I'm getting my second one edited. My third one I'm writing now, and I don't hide I don't sugarcoat anything. Maybe the language is about all I'll sugarcoat, but the name calling was very, very harsh and non-ending. To be the minute you walk home, get home and then put the key in the door, open the door, and to get beat until you're unconscious. This is what I'm talking about.
Okay.
If I had a book in my hand, then she'd smack me with the book. If she could grab a chair, she'd break the chair over me. She threw me. My first memories was of her saying to me, "You're not the same since I shook you. And so I won't shake you anymore, but I'll throw you." I mean, and I remember being in a diaper and
Right.
this was already, what was going on. She would swing me by my legs and my head would be hitting the wall, the stove, the wall, the kitchen table, and then the sink. And the third revolution, I don't remember anymore because I was already unconscious. These are the kinds of things, right?
So a lot of physical abuse, a lot of mental, emotional, just all the levels of abuse.
All levels of abuse. Yes. Yes. And when people say, "Oh, I can't believe that happened," I say, I think that's very nice. You had a life where you can't believe that could happen, but believe that it can happen and that it did happen, especially back in the day where um, you didn't have, there was nowhere to go to. And maybe it was the neighborhood I grew up in. I don't know. But, she would do this out in the middle of the street and people would be waiting for hot dogs or, for the hot dog man. Nobody, they'd look over and they were like, everybody minded their own business. And they probably thought I was the bad kid and that I deserved it.
Right.
So it was just a different time.
Did you internalize that? Did you think that you were the bad kid at some point in time?
Well, see, I would always just remember asking, why does this happen to me? I wanted, like, my very first memory is being 5 months old and being neglected. And I know it was 2 days that had gone by, and I had pushed because I wanted somebody to hold me. I didn't understand why nobody came to hold me. And I had an out of body experience where I actually saw myself as a blob. I think I died. I saw myself as a blob. I was naked and I was sloshing around in excrement. And when I went up, I saw myself all red and I'm screaming. And I was like, what is that? And that was the first connection I had with whispers, where I realized he's been saying, we had our first, like, dialogue on the earthly plane. So every time when it got bad and I would ask why, he would come in and console me and make me make sense out of things. That's why I say without him, I would not be here, because so many people don't connect. And
Yeah.
why would you connect? If you have a nice life, if your mommy comes and holds you, if your mommy comes and feeds you, if you have somebody in the family. So I had nobody. I had no father. I don't know who my father is. I had no sister, no brother, no aunts, no uncles. Everybody was killed in the Holocaust. So you have to understand um, here I am. If you had what I find is interesting with people and why I like to travel is that if I had that person's circumstances, that's who I would be. And what
Right.
did they learn in their lifetime? How did
Right.
they take that hardship? And how did they let themselves fall, or do they keep, swimming, doing the dog paddle and stay on top of things and maybe even get to the other side?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, it's amazing in a lot of ways because so many people do internalize that belief that they're bad or the problem or anything like that. And even if on the surface they still act like that's not true, it's in here, right? And there's some part of us that kind of carries that. And it's why people start then repeating those patterns. And so it sounds like things were a little bit different for you. And I'd love for you to, talk about kind of what happens after, your childhood obviously is very tumultuous, but at some point you grow up and you come out of that.
You grow up and you come out of it. And you also are, like, as a mom, I had to take a transformational
Yeah.
stance. I did not want to perpetuate this kind of trauma onto my children. And that was a true challenge. If anything, I had a lot more hands off, uh, and let them grow. They probably thought, "Ooh, I'm really strong. I can do all this." But on the sidelines, I'd be on the sidelines, and if I saw them going the wrong direction, I'd kind of, say, "Yeah, maybe we need to do more of this," as opposed to say, "I don't want you to do that anymore." So that put their focus where it should be. Like, you're really good at math. Let's go get some more math books and let's get you doing this, as opposed to, you know, if one of my kids beat every kid up on the playground in protection of their sibling, which should happen. The girl protected the boy. And I said, okay, I guess we don't need karate anymore. "Mm, you can totally protect yourself now. This is
You
very
got that.
because at
Yeah.
first she was like, "Oh, the boy touched me." And I said, "Well, how did he touch you?" "He went like that." And we're going to take some karate. Okay. She's going to learn, like, what's good touch, not bad, and your face. So then we said, okay, let's get into math. You're really good into math. Focus more on the positive instead of saying what you can't do that. And besides, what I found too is you could say whatever you want, but it's what you practice and you show them that they'll remember, as opposed to what you preach. I could say, you're not drinking that bottle or whatever over there. And, because I've had little kids in my lifetime that I write about my second or third book that there's a character called Sunni. He was already an alcoholic at age 2.
Oh my
And
goodness.
so the mother was an alcoholic. She drank everywhere. She had hidden bottles. She'd say, not for you. Well, he saw what she did and he was mimicking. That's what kids do. So
Right.
if I say, don't do this, you're not to smoke a cigarette and I'm smoking, I
Right.
can't talk. Yes.
Yeah. No. So becoming a mom yourself, is kind of a new level because you knew you didn't want to parent like you were parented, like that. You didn't have any, but the things, knowing that cognitively and then putting that into action is a whole different thing, like you're saying. Right. So I'm sure there were challenges at times where you would almost have to catch yourself.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
The
yeah.
frustration. I mean, I have 3 kids. Like there are times where it's like, I don't want to yell, but that's my default response because that's how, I was treated in certain instances.
I think that, we all make mistakes. And I think that I go and thought about certain things and I would say, we would have special time is very important with children and that they know that they are special, that we're all equal on certain levels. We're all equal. And what they have to say is very important. One sibling is not more important than the other. That is very difficult. But, you have them find their own avenues of what they're good at. Like I best examples I did is we would have dinner and that's old school, but we would have a nice conversation and ask what happened to you today from very early on. So not you don't start this when they're teenagers, because once they're teenagers, you've got a whole other ball of wax coming in. But if they're used to being open and or if they're you go, oh, I feel that you're angry. Is that what you are? You're angry. Then this let them learn um what the feeling, put the feeling into the words so that you can, do something about it and say, I've been that. And the hugest thing for me is my mother never said she was sorry. And if I made a mistake, I said, you know what? When you did not come home and I looked for you all day, I went everywhere looking for you and you were not home and 3 hours passed. I thought I was losing it. When I saw you, did I scream at you? Yeah, I did because I almost for lack of a better, it's our nervous breakdown. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I thought maybe the cops were coming and they were going to tell me you were dead. This, so you explain it. That sorry would have meant so much to me if my mother said, I'm sorry. I beat the crap out of you until you were unconscious. She wouldn't acknowledge it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think there's really something to that, it doesn't mean we have to be perfect because that's not realistic, right? We're gonna mess up on every level because we're human.
Yeah.
And, we were raised imperfectly and we are working on it, but we're not gonna be perfect every time. I lose my temper. I get frustrated. Sometimes I'm just overstimulated and short. And it's not about being perfect, but it's about acknowledging when we caused harm of some kind, even if it's just, we hurt their feelings. That's still worth saying, I'm sorry. And I was in this place and that doesn't make it okay, but I'm acknowledging you, right? I'm acknowledging how this impacted you. And, kind of like you're saying, we're really modeling for them how they then apologize and move through the world as we're doing that.
Exactly. Because now you yelled, right? And then you make like nothing happened and you don't apologize. Now you're showing that if anything happens, you don't talk about it. You just
Right.
go it under the rug. And will that ever show up later on? You better believe it. That shows up later on, all that stuff.
Absolutely.
And then when somebody talks to them in a certain kind of way, they also they will like I found that like my teenagers, when they were teenager years, they would test me out as to, hey, this person did this to me. Let me see how my mom answers back if I push her button. That's what I found was going on. And I would say, okay, one time is a warning. I don't like what you said. Two times I will say, I gave you two warnings now. Now, if you hit me again, I know karate and I will protect myself. Guess what? Because the kids, sometimes they don't understand and you have to show them, don't mess with me. And listen, that comes with verbal, that comes with physical. The extent as to what you do is like, yeah, you might be able to really hurt them. But no, I'm saying like you just hurt their pinky with one kick and that's enough for them to run away. You just give them a flavor because there's some people that don't get it until they just keep, oh, you're weak, you're weak, you're weak. I had a very tall son. And so everybody I felt it was like jail mentality. If I show how I can push this big guy around, I'm the boss. So he had to have an extra coating of knowing this is my power and these are my words because trust me, if he would, you know, back or something, boy, that would be really bad. He could bench press the whole thing at one time at the gym. So he had to really learn how to control his, push, push, push button.
Yeah, well, and children, they're so amazing at pushing buttons, right? It's one of their greatest superpowers, and they're really good at pushing their parents' buttons, especially. And it's like we know how to get in there and those trigger spots. And my children are fantastic at it. I was fantastic at it. And, it's one of those things that can be a blessing. And at the same time, it can really irk us if we don't know how to, work within that. And so kind of what I hear you saying is you're acknowledging where, your children needed support in certain areas specifically. And that sometimes that would mean, acknowledging where you also needed support in certain areas because it was the same in other ways.
Yeah. Yeah. And then today they have the internet, which I'm glad. I'm very happy my children grew up
Wow.
before they could take pictures and do all of that stuff. I mean, they could text. That was going on, texting, but then that was it. Uh, yeah, I just cannot imagine all the inundation of the world peer pressure. Now, and also a lot of, I do see a lot of parents, to avoid that, they push too much of outside activity after the school. Don't let them come up for air, not for a second. And then they're wondering why the kids are acting out. They're exhausted. So instead of pushing them so you can work, maybe have spaghetti more often, if you know what I'm saying.
Yes, yes. I'm a solo parent to 3 children, so there's a lot that is it's not complicated. It can't be, right? It's the simplifying is so important and not trying to make that a bad thing
Right,
because
exactly. Exactly.
I
Like some people say, oh, I hate grocery shopping. And I say, there's people in the world literally starving that cannot go grocery shopping. I taught my kids that this is like the best thing ever, grocery shopping. And you get your own little shopping cart to push, and I'm going to give you this and this to go and get down and they don't know. They loved it. They
yeah,
thought it was great. You get to spend
yeah.
money. Like money's a big deal, you know? And they would add up and they would be really little. I remember taking my little girl, literally very little, maybe in kindergarten, and she would already put her on the counter at the cash register. And she'd count the change back because we didn't have credit cards yet, And the lady at the cash register, and I was, yeah, she's going to be in the accountant one day.
Oh, there you go.
And now she's like, forget it. Uh,
So I'm curious, other people who've had really challenging childhoods and then they become parents, recommend how do they go through that and process? What kind of support did you have, or when those patterns from childhood come up in your own parenting, especially, how did you address those?
how did I address my own challenges that came about? Um,
Yeah, within, especially as a new parent,
as a
right?
new parent. I found I personally really I have a lot of downtime, as I call it. I like quiet. So I would find that if I started to get too frazzled, woof, I needed a 4 o'clock break during the day where I had you're doing homework. At that time I was married. You go do your work and you go play basketball outside. And I have to have just, let's say, music or absolutely nothing. I timed the timer and I just had to have total quiet. Also, I found eating. I mean, I'm talking like real tools here. This seems like it's nothing, but these little things are huge. I always made sure I ate food, my dinner, because they'd come home at 4. I ate my dinner at 2 o'clock. I wanted to make sure that I would not be hangry. I found that if my blood sugar got a certain point, I would be like, oh, no. And so I said, okay, I'm going to eat at 2 o'clock. That way, when they come, I can serve them. I can clean my level of sugar is good. And at 4 o'clock, after I've served them, um, and they weren't yet at that age where they could, take the dishes out or anything. At 4 o'clock, everybody is. Now I need my 1 hour downtime, and then again, I can re-engage. And I didn't just let them run the show as far as so and so is coming over. So and so wants to come over. We have to make a date. I need to meet the parents first. I need to see that kid at school first. I needed to make sure that kid wasn't a bad kid. I didn't want my kid to learn uh, bad behaviors that I then, like, it was bad enough when they came home and whatever you taught them, they go to school. Now they're like, that term, they go like, I'm like, you went to school this morning, not using this word all the time. I have no idea what you're saying. Who were you playing with today? I was playing with, I don't want that kid over my house. It's too much for me. There's playground, there's outside, there's.
I hear what you're saying is that you really focus on self-care techniques and that you really started to acknowledge when you would feel overstimulated or you were not at your best. And rather than making that about them, you found ways to take better care of yourself. That's what I hear you saying.
Yes, thank you. Because if I'm good, then I can give that, like if they're going to throw a fit, as they are, or something, they're not going to be coming home happy all the time. I'm
Right.
there for them now because I took care of me.
Yeah. So you put taking care of you first. And this is something that most moms struggle with. It's something I struggled with. It's something that I think it took me a lot of years to understand. So many moms think that to be a good mom, we have to put our kids first. And
that's how you put your kids first.
Right. But we don't know that. We can't quite wrap our head around that. But in order to be the mom they need, we have to put us first, which is in fact putting them first, but it's backwards, right?
Yes.
And so because, especially those who've had challenging childhoods or have gone through different traumatic experiences, your like capacity is also a little bit different for, you're more likely to potentially be triggered. You're more likely to feel overstimulated because of the things you've been through. And so even more importantly, that you have to take care of yourself and you have to recognize where your limits are and what do you need to do to ensure that you're not projecting out onto your children.
Yeah, the fuse will burn very quick if it's not replenished with the right products in there. And so like the thought will go in your mind, you mean I got to play this stupid tea time again? But
What's
it's
the video games for me? I have the
right
hardest
or
time. Oh
whatever it
my,
is. But when the second you start to hear, you mean I got to do this stupid thing? You mean I got to wash? I got to, do you mean? And you hear that anger come in? That's
yeah.
because you don't have. I was having a great tea by myself for an hour, or you have at 4 o'clock. I'm going to have a tea and it will be quiet, and that is the time that is for me. And you know what what you're teaching the children as well is that mommy is important, and she gives to herself. What I'm not saying go shopping. I'm saying a little tea time, a little quiet time. Maybe when I'm all crazy going like this, if she tells me I should have time out, well, maybe that's what the time out is so that you introspect and see why it is you think that your voice is necessary to be heard all the way around the other side of the house.
Yeah, I definitely put myself in timeout. It's one of my favorites. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm really curious. You talk a lot of, you had a really early introduction to spirituality and really early introduction to connecting to divine and, guidance. How did that impact your parenting journey and how did that impact your relationship with your children?
Yeah, it did. Well, it's interesting because I was thinking about that when I had the children, uh, and I was married, and I was married to an atheist. He did not believe in any of that stuff. So I parked that side of me, thinking that I don't need him anymore. I didn't lean on him anymore. And then when my daughter was about 10, so that's about, he showed himself one or two times, but overall at 10, started coming around big time and warning me and talking to me. And then I was listening to the warnings. I didn't know that I was going to get a divorce. And I said, you know what? I realized what is this that's going on here? Now, at the same time, don't get me wrong, I was reading all kinds of spiritual books and past lives and going to past lives and learning about crystals. I met Brian Weiss. I was in his audience. I went to two of his book signings, and he deals with past lives. I never left the spiritual world altogether. I was gaining it in a different way. But I did not fully ask for whispers as help. And then definitely when my kid was 10, she's now 38. So that's quite a while ago. I had a whole slew of angels just come in at one time. I'm going to write about all that stuff in my fourth book. And they kept coming around and telling me all kinds of warnings. And ever since then, I have not stopped. We have, there was no, I was like, why did I give that up? Because I was married. And when I would talk about it, I could see his face. I don't believe that. So it was like, okay, well, I shut that down, Now I'll never do that again. never.
Yeah, but you know what? You got to experience what other people do when they choose to disconnect from that part of themselves too, right? So there's
Yes.
a learning in itself of what that does to you and how
Wow.
that makes you feel. And then you have a newfound gratitude for it and the other side.
Yeah. Yes. And absolutely. It was amazing because once I did reconnect, it was like new pair of glasses on my face. I saw a thing and I was listening and I was more in tune. And I loved my ex-husband, but I saw things that because I parked Whispers and the Divine away for a little while, I I didn't notice. I did not notice it. Yeah. It is really wild. Yeah. Thank
Yeah. And I think, a lot of people can relate. I was very intuitive as a child, and I turned
you.
a lot of it off for all the same reasons. I was wanting connection with people who didn't believe those things. And and so I didn't say I was atheist. I was just agnostic. We're just over there.
Yeah.
And it also meant my perception was over there. And I wasn't paying attention to things. I wasn't listening to my body. I wasn't aware in the same way because I was choosing not to be. And, I think kind of waking up to that realization and then turning it all back on and starting to reconnect in a different way, we're just like, oh, why the heck did we do this in the first place?
Yeah. And you know what, Jill, you brought up a good point. As a mother, I totally did forget about myself. I did not even know who I was um until after my ex left. Then I started to learn who I was. And I really never got to learn who I was until my daughter turned 21 and I was alone. And that's when I really got to learn who I was because I didn't get that chance of learning who I was as a child. I had to fit into
Yeah.
a very archaic, controlled, you're only to be seen and you're not to speak. And that's terrible. You have to, even with my mother, I had to stay out of sight because the minute she saw me, she went berserk. She would,
Yep.
have a ranting rage. So, yeah.
Yeah, so you're in kind of the child box where you're trying to survive, right? And then you're in the marriage box where these are the beliefs, these are what you're allowed to do, and you're doing what you can to not repeat the patterns with your kids. You're supporting them, and you're learning how to take care of you on a physical level and maybe an emotional level, but definitely not a spiritual level yet.
Right.
Right. And so it sounds like that uncovering for you, your marriage ending and then your kids leaving, all of a sudden gave you this like space that you had never had your whole life.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it was like, oh, I can turn all the way back on.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that the way you said it, to not have had him for a while and to see what had happened to me during that time, I turned off the biggest and best part of myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I will say perhaps I was divinely correct because I know I will never let go of that life rope again. Never.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a lot of us, in hindsight, obviously, we see it for what it is, but we needed that experience for some, for part of the journey.
Mhm.
And, we're all on some level looking for love and acceptance. And especially those of us that didn't receive it in childhood. Right. So even more we attach to people who we think we're receiving some parts of it from, even if it's not complete.
Mhm.
And so we're fitting into this, what we're supposed to, so that we, can be in a relationship or we can be in a friendship or we can do something because it's so important for us to feel connected. And, once we start to see that's not supporting us, then we can start to realize what we were doing, but in it, we can't see it. And I think, those of us who are moms especially, and, it's really interesting. One of the things I tell people, or even when I'm talking to myself, is, would I want my kids to do that? Would I be okay, right? And so why am I okay with me
That's right.
doing this if I wouldn't be okay with them?
That's right.
And when I look at all the things I've, in my life, I don't know what the heck I was thinking, because I would never be okay if my child put themselves in a box like that I did, but I didn't know any different.
That's what you were taught, and you were
Exactly.
a well-behaved child, and you weren't allowed to explore who you were.
Mostly. Stop. Not always, but I think that's the thing. And so, the unraveling and uncovering, it's not a one size, just woof, one thing happens. Different catalytic events happen that start to open the pathways. And, sometimes it's one very big one, but there's another layer of the onion that still comes. And, sometimes it's just small things little by little. And we just start to go, who the heck am I? I've been wrong the whole time. And, for you, it's this huge childhood challenge, and then stepping into motherhood, and then now stepping into, after, like, you're still a mom, but your kids they don't need you day to day in the same way.
Yeah.
And so it's this new kind of chapter and uncovering, and, just all of the things that you've already accomplished and are continuing to accomplish, and the stories that you're sharing. It's amazing what you're doing. And, I hope that you, really honor that in yourself, in this process of uncovering and sharing the stories, so that people can remember that they too can be connected to, the divine in a different way, and that we can survive anything with that connection.
Yeah, it is. Thank you very much for that, Amanda. I also want to commend you. You're a mother that's bringing up 3 children by herself, and I think that is a beautiful thing. I think what you might or might not hear enough is that you're teaching your children how strong a woman is, and that if things don't go right, not to be afraid to move forward, and you don't have to suffer and be stuck, because what's worse than being stuck for 3 years with somebody that's bad? I don't know how long you were, so I'm just pulling a number.
Oh, yeah.
It's 3 years and 1 day. So the quicker you move on, the healthier and the less work you have to do to find who you are. Gets to a point where people just go, well, just accept it. It's the way it is. I mean, it used to be that way. I remember hearing older women like myself when I was a kid, he does what he does. It's what it is. And the man is yelling and screaming and hollering and treating her like garbage. Well, now that the woman is in the workforce and could do whatever she wants, thank goodness because she doesn't have to stay pushed down. And your children are watching, and even if they're not saying it, they're learning a lot and have a lot of respect.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't, for me, it didn't really matter what he did to me. It was when he started being dangerous around the children that I couldn't handle it anymore. And that's what got me to fight. And, yes, of course, I would have loved to fight for me, but I wasn't in that, I didn't care in the same way. But, you mess with my babies and I take everything from you. And that's where my fire came from.
See, isn't that interesting? And that's why your babies had to come along, just so that they, in a way, they had like this invisible super.
100%. They absolutely saved me and showed me what mattered. And in turn, I saved them in a lot of ways too, right? So it's kind of this beautiful together. They know I protected them. They know that I fought for them, and that they, no matter what happens, that I will be there for them. And, I think not everybody has that. And
No.
I think that that's, a gift I can give them, but also remind people that, and it's something I had to learn, that my kids don't need 2 parents. They need to be safe. They need to be loved. They need at least one stable, connected parent. That's what matters.
Right. I'd like to say a baby is a gift from love. A child needs love and gives love. And an adult who gives love is healthy.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So yeah,
that goes through a lot. That goes through a
it
lot.
really does. It really does. That's just that's perfectly said. I love it a lot. And I love that you're writing your story out and that you're sharing these big lessons and journey that you walked through and the way that your, connection really in a lot of ways was what saved you through your childhood. And now kind of this gift that you're giving others as they go through their challenges and they can read and realize maybe they had that connection and they just haven't been listening.
Right. And I think that too, when I say that, when I have a connection, I have friends that go to um, church like 3 times a week. I like to go to churches like in Europe. I love, or like if I'm in New York, I love St. Patrick's Cathedral. I like the really old
The
churches.
historic,
Yeah,
yeah.
the historic, and I like it when there's nobody in there. I don't go for the pomp and stance. I don't need all that singing. I can find it on the internet. I don't need the distraction of, now we're going to, I don't need somebody to guide me along. I just can sit quietly for a few minutes and close my eyes and get my message. I rather prefer that. I think that this thing where this is the set way, how you do it, you go to church on Sunday and now you're supposed to feel
It's
better,
another box.
you know. So you can just,
Yeah.
if you're
Yeah.
not feeling good, you can have these like little rituals in your house to help yourself along. Ring a bell, and in Jain religion, it's if you ring a bell, you gave an angel its wings. Well, I did a good deed already now today. I gave an angel its
I
wings.
love it.
So little tricks that
Good.
way that keep you um the vibration and the thoughts in a positive way. You don't have to wait till Sunday if you're not feeling good, and do little things for yourself. Little things go so far. So when you're really suffering and the kid is screaming and they're yelling, you're not going to have, oh my God, I think I'm going to kill this kid. You saying, okay, 4 o'clock is tea. I'll be fine. I can have an hour. I'll bring myself down to, have a conversation with yourself. Pull yourself down. If it's counting, if it's bring my angels around me, surround me, give me the strength. And this too shall pass, because you have to be able to turn that switch that's coming on, off.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's beautiful. And I've never been an organized religion person for all of those reasons. I'm much
Mhm,
more a connect through my own connection and interpretation. And,
mhm,
the however you choose to connect is right for
mhm.
you. But I think that it's something that we can embed in our lives in a different way. And I love the little practices, just like the little self-care things. It's the same kind of concept, right? It's the
Absolutely.
ways that we take care of ourselves physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and that we embed those things into just the way we operate our lives. And we go,
Right.
okay, I'm feeling overwhelmed. What do I need? Do I need quiet? Do I need, to connect to spirit? Do I need to go scream and get some emotions out and then calm down? Like whatever the thing is,
Yeah.
what do I
Mm.
need to take care of me in this moment so that I can now take care of my kids?
And sometimes, money is an issue, 'cause especially, everything is going up. You can just have a candle. Candles last a nice long time. And just having a candle and sitting in a dark room, putting a nice little music on, look for a Buddhist chant, or listen to some of your monk chants. Have that candle on. Put your fingers over your head. Put a wet rag over your head. But the whole time say, I'm doing this for me. This is my time. Put a little aroma, spray a little something into the air, and and just say, this smells really good. That lavender is supposed to be good for me, and I feel it going into my system. You have to use your visionary senses, your visualization senses, and say, what can I taste? What can I? Don't fall to food, you know, like, oh, I'm going to eat this and this and this. Be careful of that, not to fall into addiction. Don't say, oh, I'm going to have another glass of wine. This is falling into addiction. I'll numb myself out. That's not what it's about. It's healthy, talking to yourself in a positive way. Keep on the positive track, because the minute that negative thought comes in, then you'll know to stop it. You go, wait, where did that come from? And whose voice said that?
Mhm.
That's not my voice. That's my mother's voice. I remember her saying that to me. I'm not ugly. I'm counteract it,
Mhm.
And if you are in a bad headspace, you might have to have a little longer time out, and that's okay too.
That's okay too. Yeah,
Yes.
no, I think this is fantastic advice, and I really appreciate you sharing. And amazing that through all of your trials and tribulations, where you have come out, and that you've maintained your connection to the spirits, and that if anything strengthened it,
Yeah.
and really kind of leaning into that in a new way. And I really appreciate your time and sharing your stories. And is there any last kind of final advice you would like to leave the listeners with?
Well, let me see. I was going to say, if the other thing that's really, really good is to take a bubble bath, even if you don't have the money for the bubbles. But take the bubble bath and just watch the water go down and wash the day away. It's really very powerful.
Mm.
Take a wash before you go to bed, so you're not taking any kind of anger or upset and this and that with you into the bed. You'll sleep better. But I do want to add this. So there's obscurations that we face as mothers, as people. You have anger, you have expectations, jealousy, anger, and resentment. So from your children, from people, you will get annoyance. You will have to deal with abandonment, anger. But what annoyance does is it teaches you patience. And abandonment, if you were abandoned, that teaches you self-reliance. And anger teaches us forgiveness and compassion. And healing words, you got works where you read this backwards. So compassion and forgiveness washes away the anger. Self-reliance washes away the abandonment, and patience washes away annoyance. So that's
Love
my
it.
final word.
That is
Right,
beautiful.
reading
Thank
my
you.
book.
I love it. Thank you. The words of wisdom are amazing. And, for all the listeners who want to hear, kind of more details of the stories, and, I will put all of the links to your book information and how people can, learn more about you on the show notes as well. So thank you again, Nancy, for your time and for being on the show and just sharing more about your life.
Thank you so much, Amanda. I really enjoyed a conversation with you today. All the best to you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Awakened Motherhood. I hope today's episode inspired you and offered support for your journey. Remember, your story has the power to ignite change, and your resilience is a testament to your strength as a mother. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. Share it with other mothers who might benefit from our stories of empowerment and healing. I invite you to connect with me on social media platforms at Amanda Quick Healing, or visit my website, amandaquickhealing.com, for more information on other ways to work with me. Until next time, keep embracing your divine self and discovering your warrior mama within. Thank you for being part of Awakened Motherhood, where your story is the spark for change.